Welcome to our special coverage in Lebanon. The Israeli strikes continue to pound different parts of the country despite talks about the US proposal handed to Lebanese government. Also in Gaza, Israel continues to savage war despite condemnations from international community that depicts its practices as genocide. Let's first discuss the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Explosions have rocked Beirut's southern suburbs in the early hours today as Israel continues its intense attacks for a fourth consecutive day. The Israeli military has issued 2 forced evacuation orders from these remaining in these largely abandoned neighborhoods since the morning. An Israeli airstrike has flattened an entire building in the dense Tayouna neighborhood, just a few kilometers from downtown Beirut's Lebanon's capital. While there are no immediate reports of casualties, the bomb struck a lower level of the building, reducing much of it to the rubble. Over the past 8 weeks, similar airstrikes have leveled hundreds of buildings and homes, destroying thousands of housing units. Rescue operations were underway in Lebanon's Baalbek following an Israeli strike that hit a civil defense center yesterday. At least 12 people were killed in the airstrike, which destroyed the civil defense center building in the town of Doris, located in the Baalbek district of eastern Lebanon. And for deeper analysis of the latest developments in Lebanon, we're joined by Brigadier General Adel Al-Marmoushi, strategic expert from Beirut. Welcome, sir, to our channel Qnews. So, Mr. Al-Marmoushi, why is Washington repeatedly talking about imminent truce deal in Lebanon despite the ongoing Israeli escalation?
أعتقد أن هذه الهدنة تسعى إليها جادة الإدارة الأمريكية.
I think that this truce that Washington is truce is something that the entire world is looking forward to. But in this framework, no solutions are going to be enacted and operationalized without reaching a prior ceasefire. In fact, in all cases, we are aspiring for this truce to take place in order for us to be saved from the plight of this worsening war that has leveled a lot of buildings and infrastructure in Al-Bika and the southern Dahia, or suburb. And so Lebanon is in dire need of this truce. In fact, we're all looking forward to it.
Right. In light of the Israeli continuing aggression, do you think there is a kind of disagreement between the Biden administration and the Netanyahu government regarding Lebanon?
أعتقد
Well, I think that this matter is quite clear. There has been a lot of discrepancies and discords between the American administration and the Israeli government, led by the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu. We have seen ever since the war started and ever since the 7th of October events took place that no ceasefire took place, and Israel just keeps on demolishing the infrastructure of Gaza, and they are doing the same thing in Lebanon. And so Israel seems to keep on targeting civilian districts, but in the past weeks, it seems that Israel has started targeting military centers affiliated with Hezbollah. That's true, but recently the Israeli forces have been targeting a lot of infrastructure, and they are not limiting their military operations to military centers affiliated with Hezbollah anymore, which is a huge violation and breach to international humanitarian law and the international law in general.
Now, the new Israeli Defense Minister, Yisrael Katz, said that Israel will not agree to any agreement that does not include the disarmament of Hezbollah. How do we expect Hezbollah's response to such statements?
In fact, the Israeli ruling regime, being an extremist one, has been aspiring for achieving long-term strategic goals, and this is evident in the slogan proposed by Netanyahu when he said that the goal of this battle is to change and alter the entire map of the Middle East. And with regards to the Lebanese front, Netanyahu said that he wants to return northern settlers, Israeli settlers, to Lebanon. And in fact, right now he is targeting other villages that are border villages between Israel and Lebanon. And that's why he keeps on intensifying his operations over there. And as well, he's proposing the disarmament of Hezbollah entirely. And this matter, in my opinion, is greatly complex because there has to be national approval in the LAF on this decision. There has to be a consensus in the arenas of the LAF in order for the disarmament of Hezbollah to take place, or else a civilian war is going to take place in Lebanon. And as a professor of law, I think it's greatly important for armament to be restricted to Lebanese official and regular security forces and military forces. But to get Hezbollah to get disarmed, this matter needs to be regulated by the Lebanese authorities and international organizations in order to guarantee that the Lebanese lands are going, the Lebanese state is never going to suffer from any other military operations from Israel in the future. And if that actually happened, the Lebanese state is going to impose full control and dominance over its territories and airspaces and sea spaces in a way that is completely sovereign.
Lebanese caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati said that the Lebanese government gives priority to reaching a ceasefire and definitely implements Resolution 1701 without any amendments as is. How will Israel react to such a firm position from the Lebanese officials?
In fact, we hope that Israel is going to approve to bring forth a ceasefire and to bring forth a cessation of hostilities and to succumb to the provisions of the Security Council Resolution number 1701. In fact, the caretaker government led by Mikati and with coordination with the Lebanese Legislative Authority, I think that both authorities have been abiding by the provisions of the resolution number 1701. And now it's Israel's turn to get on board and to succumb to its provisions. And here comes the role of the international community to monitor the Israeli authorities as they abide by these provisions of the Security Council Resolution number 1701. In fact, we have been seeing how Israel is bombing different areas in Syria and Lebanon in a huge breach to this resolution. And as Donald Trump said, this matter requires comprehensive solutions, starting with Iran all the way to Lebanon. And so this means that Hezbollah needs to be disarmed. And we all know that Hezbollah gets armed and gets its arms supply from Iran. And so the international organizations and international community needs to watch and monitor this matter. And if this actually happened, we'll be able to avoid the replication of these practices from the Israeli side. And here in this equation, no half solutions are going to be viable. And for that matter, I aspire to see an international conference take place in which all countries of the world are represented in order to look into this matter. But right now, what Israelis are doing, they are bringing forth new interpretations to the provisions of the Security Council Resolution number 1701 in order to give themselves a pretext to keep on breaching the airspace and the land space of Lebanon. And of course, this contradicts the principles of the state's right to rule over its national territories.
Right, that was Brigadier General Adel Al-Mashmoushi, strategic expert from Beirut. Thank you so much for your valuable insights. And now we move to the latest developments in the Israeli war on Gaza. Two Palestinian prisoners from Gaza have died in Israeli detention, according to the Palestinian Prisoners Society and the Palestinian Prisoners Affairs Commission. Both organizations condemned the deaths, describing them as part of what they called Israel's slow death policy against Palestinian prisoners. They accuse Israeli authorities of systematic torture, medical negligence, and the denial of basic needs, which they say have led to the death of dozens of prisoners over the years. The groups called for international accountability, urging global action to end practices they argue violate human rights and international law. Israeli occupation forces have stormed the Balata el-Balad area east of Nablus in the occupied West Bank, ransacking a home and arresting a Palestinian man. In a separate raid, Israeli soldiers entered the Al Ain refugee camp west of the Nablus, searching several homes. According to Wafa news agency, no arrests were reported in that operation. Israeli airstrikes and artillery bombardments across Gaza have killed 5 Palestinian civilians, with casualties reported in Gaza City and northern areas of the Strip. Local sources confirmed that 2 Palestinians were killed in an artillery attack targeting the western roundabout area in Beit Lahia in northern Gaza. Meanwhile, 3 others lost their lives in a separate Israeli strike near the General Security Junction in western Gaza City. And for more analysis to the latest developments in the Palestinian territories, we have from Tunisia Yahya Qaoud, an Israeli affairs expert. Mr. Qaoud, good evening to you, sir. Mr. Qaoud, can you hear us? Yes. Right. So UN committee says Israel's Gaza practice is consistent with genocide. In your opinion, could Israel be punished for such crimes?
In fact, the direct answer, the short answer to that is yes, if the international community and the United States wanted that to happen. The Israeli occupation forces have been committing genocidal crimes and have been putting the entire Gaza Strip under complete blockade and siege. And in fact, the international community, represented by its different organizations and states, will definitely do something about this and will object to that if they want, or would have objected to that if they wanted. But what we see is that the United States keeps on covering Israel by using the veto over and over in the Security Council.
Right. Now, how could the UN reports about the Israeli war crimes reflect on Israel's position or standing in the international institutions?
At the outset, these UN reports could be more serious, but in fact, these requests usually start with the words that are not very strict, because these reports start with formulations like we request of Israel or we ask of Israel to do so and so, and this is not really a binding language. the United Nations, for instance, should have succumbed to the Geneva Convention on War by allowing entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza, because what is over there in Gaza is just civilians, not military forces. But we keep on seeing how UN reports use weak language, lenient rather language, that in fact just says we request of Israel to do so and so, or we ask of Israel to do so and so. And in fact, sometimes the reports say, we ask of Israel to just increase or guarantee the access of humanitarian aid into Gaza, and this, in fact, is not really a binding statement for Israel to succumb to the provisions of the convention.
Now, Mr. Qaaoud, in light of the Israeli brutal escalation, from your point of view, what could be Israel's plans for the future of Gaza?
In fact, it is obvious that when we see the Israeli occupation forces, we have been seeing, I would say, that the Israeli occupation forces have been establishing, new settlements in the north and the south, and they went to Rafah and colonized it completely. And right now they are building a new settlement even in the north of the Gaza Strip. And we can see right now that the Israeli occupation forces are not just establishing interim military camps, but they are building concrete establishments and buildings, because they have a long-term plan. The Israeli authorities have a long-term plan to get the settlers to reside permanently in these buildings. In fact, this specific thing and the escalations and the genocide taking place in the Gaza Strip is quite indicative that Israel has a long-term plan to displace the Palestinian people and to liquidate and terminate the Palestinian cause with all its different aspects. And these are the plans of Israel for the future of the Gaza Strip.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. That was Yahya Qaaoud, an Israeli affairs expert from Tunisia. And I guess this concludes our top headlines for the day, or rather our coverage. This coverage. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.